the wake of the racially charged riots in Charlottesville, Kelly was photographed in the background of Trump Tower looking dour as Trump spoke.
I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either.
Kelly had urged the president to offer a more forceful condemnation of the white supremacists involved, but Trump did not take the advice. The relationship really started to unravel during the public relations disaster surrounding former staff secretary Rob Porter. Porter was accused of abuse by two ex-wives. Kelly initially defended him. The president personally blamed his chief of staff for the fallout. Despite the hiccups, the president repeatedly sang Kelly's praises on Twitter and pushed back on reports that he was unhappy with his work.
He's doing a great job. He will be here, in my opinion, for the entire 7 remaining years.
Behind the scenes, it was a different story. In Bob Woodward's book, Fear, the veteran journalist quotes Kelly as describing Trump as a, quote, idiot, and also said, "We're in crazy town. I don't even know why any of us are here. This is the worst job I've ever had." Kelly later called that, quote, BS, and Trump said publicly he believed him. Their public pronouncements aside, the tension inside the West Wing was obvious. Kelly recently got into a heated shouting match with National Security Advisor John Bolton. And now that it may be finally the end of his tenure, Kelly and the president are no longer speaking. For Kelly, leaving this job may actually come as a welcome relief.
The last thing I wanted to do was walk away from one of the great honors of my life, being the Secretary of Homeland Security. But I did something wrong, and God punished me, I guess.
Ryan Noble, CNN, Washington.
Just very briefly.
Let's talk more about this now with Peter Mathews. Peter, a professor of political science at Cypress College, joining us via Skype this hour. Peter, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Let's start with the former FBI Director James Comey's testimony. How much impact do you believe it will have, and did we really learn anything new there?
Nothing new, but it was the reiteration of it was very good because it showed that the rule of law is extremely important, not just for Comey, but for all of us. And Comey warned against us getting numb at the attack on the rule of law. The Republicans were only interested in just going after Hillary Clinton's emails once again. So there was quite a contrast there between Comey's approach and the Republican leadership on the committees.
With regards, though, to Comey's comments about Robert Mueller, that if Mueller were fired, that it wouldn't derail these investigations, or would the impact, in your view, be more significant?
I think he's got a point because Mr. Mueller has farmed out a lot of the work to places that cannot be touched. For example, the Southern District of New York. They've got a lot of information he's already given to them, and they're already acting on it. So if he were to be fired, there are other avenues that have been opened, and there are institutions that are working forward on this issue, and the investigation will not stop. And I think that Mr. Trump will still be in jeopardy for what he may have done already. So I'm not worried about Mueller getting fired.
Another big headline out of the Trump White House is that the Chief of Staff John Kelly is on his way out the door, this revolving door out of the Trump White House. The two reportedly are not even speaking to each other, Peter. So how big of an impact will this have on the Trump White House in your view?
Well, it's going to have an impact because he was brought in, the Chief of Staff was brought in to bring stability to the White House. And for a while he did that. He was able to make sure that people coming into to meet the president were actually cleared for it, and it was all organized. But the president had a very freestyle, winging it type of manner where he didn't really like that kind of organization. And that's one reason they clashed. The two of them clashed on the process and the procedures of this. And I think that it could happen once again that even with a new chief of staff, the president's personality is such that he is not really into having an organized, methodical way of doing things. That can be a real problem, and it can be a very completely unsettled White House once again, no matter who's in the chief of staff position.
Peter, you talk about these various investigations being farmed out into different places. Let's focus on those court filings and the new insight we're getting into these investigations. It shows there is a lot of smoke for sure, and even goes as far as implicating individual number one as the alleged mastermind that led criminal activity. Individual one, we understand, is the President of the United States. But a lot of smoke, Peter, but is there a smoking gun from what you see?
I think we've come the closest to having a smoking gun at this point, George. Matter of fact, that has the term unindicted co-conspirator come to mind because that's what happened in the Watergate era when the Watergate grand jury actually labeled President Nixon as an unindicted co-conspirator, which means someone who has actually conspired illegally with someone else to commit a crime or to use illegal means to achieve a legal end, as Trump has done apparently, according to these reports. He actually directed Cohen, according to Cohen, and I think that the Southern District of New York attorneys would not even put this forth in the terminology if they didn't have corroborating evidence. It's very serious right now, because if he has conspired with Cohen to pay off Stormy Daniels and to pay off Ms. McDougal, that's a very serious crime. That's a felony right there. And I think this is the closest we've come to a smoking gun. That's the way I look at it.
Peter Mathews, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, George.